What's up everyone, my name is Gothix and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be providing some commentary or a review, if you will, for a new show that just dropped on Amazon Prime called HAZBIN Hotel. Just an FYI, this video is going to have a couple of spoilers and I'm going to be showing some things that maybe you don't want your small child to be watching. If you've never heard of HAZBIN Hotel, the brief synopsis of this show is essentially the main character, her name is Charlie, and Charlie is apparently the daughter of Lucifer and the princess of hell. And Charlie has this great idea to create a hotel which will be used to rehabilitate sinners to hopefully have them redeemed to eventually enter the kingdom of heaven. I think that is a fantastic idea. Now, this show, I saw a lot of people online, mainly conservatives and Christian folks, reacting to, I don't even think it was the trailer, I think it was like the first 60 seconds of the show, and they were bugging, all right? This is demonic, this is unbiblical, you shouldn't watch it. I'm not gonna tell you whether or not you should watch this show, and I'm not gonna judge you if you decide not to watch this show. What I will say is that based on Romans 14, some Christians are stronger in their faith in certain areas than others. So whether or not you choose to watch something, that's your choice. If it's not causing you to sin, if it's not jeopardizing your spiritual health, that's a different story. Again, you can disagree with me on that, but there's a big slippery slope into thinking that Christians should not be engaging with anything secular. If that were the case, we would have to leave the earth. Seriously. So I watched this show. I watched all 8 episodes to provide some fair commentary aside from don't watch it, it's demonic. For as much as the world likes to complain about how degenerate Hollywood and the media is, a lot of people don't put much of an effort to provide alternative content. And if they do provide alternative content, it usually sucks. Oh, here's a Christian movie, white picket fence, 5 Bible verses, the family dog, you know, happy ending, feel good happy ending. That is not art. That is a copy and paste template. And so while your criticisms about this show or any show that's demonic in Hollywood may seem valid, there is something to be said about people who don't take action. Complaining is not taking action. So with that in mind, go out and support companies who are trying to change the marketplace. Lore TV, the place that is hosting my documentary, go support them. Go support any of these other studios out there instead of just complaining. Now that I got that out of the way, let's get into my review. This is going to be a very janky review because I'm not someone who typically comments on, you know, movies and TV shows and things of that nature. So this is going to be very janky. So please bear with me, all right? This show obviously has a lot of biblical inspiration. Whoever wrote this has clearly read the Bible. That being said, this show is theologically illiterate, and I think that's intentional. If anyone watches this show and thinks that this is an accurate depiction of heaven and hell, I don't know what to tell them. Clearly, they haven't been searching that long, if at all. With that in mind, I think it's important for us to remember that we shouldn't expect TV shows, let alone shows made by non-Christians, to accurately depict the Bible. It is our responsibility to seek the truth through God's word as opposed to expecting that out of a cartoon. To be fair, let me start off by first telling you what I enjoyed about the show, because there were some things that I liked. I liked the animation style. I like the voice acting. For the most part, I like the character designs, with some exceptions, like Mrs. Big Hands over here. I don't get it. Like, what was the creative process for this? But there were some characters that I really enjoyed watching. Nifty was one. Nifty is like this little demonic maid. She's from like the 1950s, and she's all over the place. She's just so random, and I'm kind of random. So I was like, I like her. She's cute. And then there was another one. His name is Alistair, and he is sort of like a 1930s radio broadcaster. And his voice actually sounds like one of those old-timey radios. And it's so interesting. There's an ongoing feud between him and another character who looks like a TV. And I think that's just a really cute dynamic. And if I had to imagine what a feud between radio and TV would look like, I think it would look like that.
Everyone remembers me from my radio show, the proper medium to express oneself. But you insisted on this noisy picture box advertisement.
So yeah, there were some personalities and overall character designs that I did like in the show. Now, let me tell you some of the things I didn't like. Number one, this show was edgy just for the sake of being edgy. And I don't have the cleanest vocabulary, but literally every other word was an F-bomb, a C-bomb, a P-bomb, so many bombs, so many. I'm losing track. It's also worth noting that HAZBIN Hotel is rated ages 16 and up, which is an absolute joke. While I do think that some kids might be mature enough to discuss certain topics, I think there's a fine line between that and unnecessarily exposing them to questionable content. Like, I'm sure most teenagers know what sex is, but is it really necessary for them to know what BDSM is? I know most of us grew up watching shows like South Park. However, if South Park is rated for mature audiences, then why the hell is HAZBIN Hotel ages 16 and up? And I know some of you might say, well, a lot of the sexual content was in the 4th episode, and that episode is 18 plus. No. You see this? Right here? You see this? Yeah, this was literally the 1st episode, so stop lying to me. By the way, this show is a musical. I'm not really crazy about musicals. I'll be honest, I was like cringing in my seat during some of the songs, but there were a few songs in the show that I thought had some redeeming qualities. The first song is Hell is Forever, which is in the 1st episode. And if you listen to the lyrics, it's pretty much exactly what it says. Again, a lot of the biblical references are taken out of context. For example, the song mentions an eye for an eye, which is completely contradictory to what Jesus says in Matthew. But I think overall, the whole concept of hell is forever is an accurate statement.
'Cause hell is forever, whether you like it or not. Have their chance to behave better, now they boil in the pot. 'Cause the rules are black and white, there's no use in trying to fight it. They're burning for their lives until we kill them again.
And the other song that I liked is called Poison. And I think Poison did a really good job at depicting what it is to be a slave to sexual sin and lust.
'Cause I know you're poison, you're feeding me poison. Addicted to this feeling, I can't help but swallow up your poison. I made my choice and every night I'm living like there's no tomorrow. Any way you want me, baby, that's the way you got me, I'll be yours. My story's gonna end with me dead from your poison.
And just an FYI, Poison is in the 4th episode, which is the most explicit of all the episodes, just in case you intend on watching it. So now I want to go over a few things that I thought was very funny. This show tried so hard to distort the Bible, yet in the process still ended up promoting a lot of biblical truth. And we can see that with the show's depiction of what hell looks like. You'll find everything from murderers to addicts, the sexually immoral, and literally every single letter in the LGBTQ, which I found interesting because, as I said, this show makes a point to distort the Bible as much as possible, and yet in an effort to, I'm assuming, promote diversity and inclusion, they still inadvertently affirmed God's intended design for human sexuality. Speaking of which, there was no mention of God or an ultimate creator in the show, which honestly I think was a good move, because, I mean, you're already gonna piss off a lot of people by making a show like this. That being said, since God isn't mentioned anywhere in this universe, or at least in the 8 episodes that I watched, the show makes it seem like the angels as a collective are in charge of creation and are the moral arbiters of the universe. So here's the other thing about hell is a lot of the characters believe that they are beyond redemption. There's some characters who literally will say, I'm not trying to get into heaven. No one can save me. And this is something that I commonly hear with people who have done wrong in their life. We've all done wrong. But people who are far from God or they haven't experienced God's grace before, they think that I'm just I'm a lost cause. And then also there are some characters in this show that think it's unfair for them to be in hell, which is, again, a very common thing that I hear from people who don't know God. And this is the result of thinking that apart from God, we can be good people. Well, what do you mean by good? Like I said, a lot of the characters who were in hell were murderers, thieves, prostitutes. If you think that morality, your sense of right and wrong, is subjective, then everyone else can say the exact same thing, because no one is being held to an ultimate standard of good. It's just whatever you want. And that's what hell is. And on that note, there's actually a scene where Charlie is doing a presentation in front of a court of angels who get to decide the fate of the sinners in hell. And if you just pause the video when she's flipping through her cue cards, you can see that she has definitions written out. And one of the definitions is love. And she has it listed as an intense feeling of deep affection. And so all that to say, if we tie this back into the reality that a lot of people think there are their own moral arbiters, a lot of people also think that they get to define truth and that words don't have any real meaning. You'll hear things like love is love or a woman is a woman. All right, so now that we talked about hell, let's discuss heaven. What does that look like in this show? Aside from the obvious color palette, there's not much of a difference. And I think that was to make the argument that, oh, we're all sinners. And yes, we are all sinners, but the goal for humanity should be to not sin. Think about what you're implying by saying you're always going to keep sinning. Do you lack self-control? That's something that the show obviously doesn't explain. So when you look at the people in heaven, they're prideful, they're arrogant, they're just nasty.
I'm sorry, but this court finds that there is no evidence souls in hell can be redeemed.
Oh, yes! I win! Suck it!
The show tries to paint heaven as sort of like this holier than thou, while still depicting the people in hell as being, victims, innocent victims who were judged unfairly. Another thing that I found very comical about how this show depicted heaven was that none of the angels seemed to know exactly how to get into heaven in the first place. So there was an episode where Charlie asks Adam, by the way, this is Adam, what are the steps required in order for me to get into heaven? And frantically, he starts scribbling on a piece of paper as if he didn't actually know. So he made it up on the fly, and he came up with act selfless, don't steal, and stick it to the man. If you've read Genesis, then you know. Charlie says, well, hold on a second. My friend who's in hell right now, Angel Dust, the gay porn star, my friend did these 3 things, so why isn't he here in heaven with us?
See? He did everything on your checklist. He was selfless, he stopped Nifty from stealing, and he stuck it to that Mothman!
But then why isn't he here then?
Yeah, why isn't he here? Wait, none of you know what gets someone into heaven?
This questioning stops now. We know when a soul arrives. We know when they pass divine judgment. It is our job to ensure these souls are safe.
So basically, your ticket to heaven is you doing good works. If you think that the bad things you've done can be forgiven based on how many good things you do, then how many good things are required before you are forgiven? And more importantly, who has the authority to forgive you of your sins? Obviously, it's not the angels, according to the show, so who is it? Now, before I wrap up this review, I want to give you guys a few takeaways to consider. This is more so for people who don't believe in God or think this is all nonsense and what have you. I want you to think about this. In the opening episode, we see that animation of Lucifer getting cast down because he had great creative ideas that threatened the kingdom of heaven. All right, that's what is said in the show. And then later on in that scene, they say that Lucifer wanted to share the gift of free will to all of humanity. And so in an effort to do so, he offered he offered the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil to Eve, who was apparently Adam's second wife. And so she accepted that offer, and it came at a consequence of sin seeping out into the world. So there was some half-truths in there, okay? Because that is the reality of free will, is that without an objective moral compass, free will leads to evil. In Genesis, God says you can have anything you want in this garden, but do not eat from this tree. And if you've read Genesis, you know that that's exactly what Adam and Eve did. So because they rebelled against God, that welcomed sin into the world. So likewise, when people are condemned to hell, it's because they chose to reject God and rebel against God. So just something to consider when we talk about free will. Free will is a beautiful gift from God that can unfortunately be abused. He loves us so much that he's not going to force us to follow his ways. But if we don't follow his ways, we have to accept the consequences of what that can lead to. This doesn't mean that we are beyond forgiveness. Anyone can be forgiven. It says in the Bible, literally, they asked Jesus, how many times should I forgive someone? 7 times? And he says 77 times 7, I think it was. Quick maths. Basically, infinitely. You forgive people as many times as you can possibly imagine. Because if you don't forgive, then he won't forgive you. And he loves us so much that he is willing to forgive us as long as we are willing to humble ourselves and accept him. Now, here's the other thing that I wanted you guys to consider about this show. Spoiler alert, if you haven't gotten spoilers from this review already, like I said, I'm terrible at doing these. In the show, there's a character named Sir Pentious who initially acts like your stereotypical villain. He's just a jerk. Long story short, Sir Pentious joins the HAZBIN Hotel, and after a while, he starts to change for the better. He starts to practice forgiveness, and he learns to trust people. And during the final episode, there's a scene where he tries to save his friends, but in the process of doing so, he dies and ends up in heaven. And the angels in heaven are shocked. They're like, what? And so all that to say, what does that episode tell us about getting into heaven and truly being redeemed? Sacrifice. Again, the way that it's depicted in this show, kind of, I don't know, but sacrifice. That's what Jesus did for us. That's what he expects of us, to sacrifice the way in which we want to live and instead follow his way. Instead of being so selfish and self-centered, we sacrifice for other people. And so I thought that was very interesting, and the fact that the angels in the show were shocked that he was there. I would assume that's how a lot of Christians are going to be when they get into heaven and they're like, wait, he's here? She's here? No one is too far from God. I am living proof of that. Overall, I enjoyed watching HAZBIN Hotel, but I still think it could have been better if they had toned down a lot of the sexual content. Like I said, I think it's dishonest for Amazon Prime to say that this show is perfectly normal for teenagers to watch. Meanwhile, they have something like South Park listed for mature audiences. With that in mind, if I were to critique this show purely from an artistic standpoint, I think they did a good job. And despite the obvious distortion of the Bible, I think there's an opportunity to reconsider our approach when creating alternative media. There's a reason why so many young people like this show, and instead of dismissing all of its redeeming qualities, we should be studying it. Yes, the good news is the most important message there is, but people don't care about what we know until they know that we care. And if we claim to care about reaching people through art, then it might be worth considering what we define as art. Anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun watching this and critiquing it. If you guys would like to hear my perspective on another show, another movie, as long as it's not like 80 hours long, I will consider doing it. But if you want to hear my perspective as a Christian woman, as a black woman, as a woman, I can check all the boxes if you'd like. Let me know. Drop some suggestions in the comment section below. If you liked it, give me a like, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you share this video with someone who needs to see it. My name is Gothix, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.